Hello, I'm Fred Evans. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The Supreme Court recently refused to take up the issue of gay marriage. Mariana Cordier, a local attorney, will discuss the ramifications of this non-decision. The incidence of suicide has increased markedly recently. Rachel Larkin, the director of the HOPES program of the Mental Health Association, which directs the suicide hotline, has this story. Recently, a volunteer at the Victim Rights Foundation needed dental treatment and was able to get it at the dental clinic at Community Clinic Incorporated. Greg Wims, a member of the Board of Advisors of the University of Maryland Dental School, observed the clinic and will explain the program. The Board of Elections is always a busy place before an election, especially now with early voting and organizing all the polling places. Gilberto Zelaya from the Board of Elections will fill us in. So tell us about this recent Supreme Court decision and what implications it has for gay marriage.
Well, thank you for having me back on the show, always. But, you know, the impact of the Supreme Court passing on this, I think it was 4 or 5 states that had bans. You know, Virginia had a referendum, it passed, the population, to allow gay marriages in the state, banned it. So now the bans, for all intents and purposes, are no longer stayed, they've been lifted, and so the population who wishes to, you know, get married, they can. And so, you know, some of the governors have responded, you know, negatively because they were disappointed that the Supreme Court didn't make a decision one way or the other. So it's passed on making that decision, and I think it's, on one hand, allowing the population that's voting for this and wanting to, they're speaking out, and this is what they want, to permit it to go forward. But it's also, I think, giving a chance for the state, all the states and the population to catch up and what they believe would be right, or that this is not something that's going to, you know, terminate,
right.
You know, all the idea of living, you know, happily married properly. You know, it's a good thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and you even see it with the Catholic Church that has made moves, significant moves, also to accept.
But does the Supreme Court have the option of maybe coming back and revisit this issue?
They do, and I think that the reason the folks that are pro-ban and pro-stopping gay marriages are upset is that I think more time that goes by, the increase in support, more mainstream it becomes, not to say it's not already mainstream, but more and more becomes more and more mainstream. It's going to be very difficult for the Supreme Court to find a basis to say, no, you can't. And I think partially the politics
and the
is that
the court could change too, right?
The court could change.
And
I
the
think
members of the Supreme Court.
Right, so depending who appoints the members, and even then, you can have a Democrat appoint a Supreme Court justice, and they may become more conservative. You have a Republican, they may become more liberal. So it's, you know, but you're guessing. But, you know, history has a way of showing how the justices have decided this case. But I think the fact that they passed on it, I don't think the conservatives had necessarily the votes to have the bans upheld. And so instead of having it affirmatively said, the bans are unconstitutional.
What implications does this have, in your opinion, nationally, toward the total acceptance eventually of gay marriage?
Well, it's
or will we ever be there?
Well, I think it definitely resonates that it's supportive, because it's permitting individuals to exercise their right. And so, and I use individuals because, you know, there's men and women.
Right.
But to be gender neutral, but because it permits the individuals to get married, it's like any right. Once it's given, it's very difficult to take away. And so with the delay on deciding one way or the other, it may come to pass where it never needs to be decided anymore. Or it can come back. And if it comes back and it's had more time to become established, and for everyone to understand that there's no fallout, you know, other than, of course, in any divorce, regardless if you're same-sex or not, there's that fallout. But that's not the issue.
How many states have approved gay marriage so far?
19. There's 19 states that have it, yeah.
I think it's interesting too because also the electorate and also the country itself is changing. I think it used to be extremely conservative, and now because of the different generations and the older individuals, as time goes, and you have a huge diverse community in different kind of backgrounds in the sense of their opinions or you know.
I don't know if I'm going to disagree with you on this one, that we've become, I don't know if we've become less conservative as a nation, on maybe around certain issues.
Yeah, not less conservative, but more as if you look at the age range of individuals, if you talk to someone who is in their 80s, 70s, 60s, as opposed to 20s, 30s, 40s, it changes.
Okay. A generational,
yeah, it's a generation.
generational situation.
Plus, you know, more important people are not hiding their preferences. They're out there, so you're working with them. They're your friends. They're your colleagues,
right.
And so you like them. You know, it's not, oh, you know, it's taboo. I can't even talk to this person. No, they're people. They have the right to love. They have the right to live. They have the right to be married. And so, you know, why would you deny them that? You know, as a divorce attorney, more power to them, because eventually they'll be in my office for divorce.
Oh, so
Sorry.
It's all about your income.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's part of life,
Yes.
right? It's some things work and some things don't, but you have the right. You're not hurting anyone. You're not, for all intents and purposes, you're not breaking any laws.
Right.
You know, so why not? I mean, why do we have to regulate to the minutia these particular areas when it's ridiculous?
It's also life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right. It's a fundamental constitutional right.
Well, the folks who wrote that were also slave owners too, but that's a whole nother
Yeah, of course.
discussion.
Well, and you
History.
don't want to trigger the pursuit of
Well,
happiness to be
let's-
let's legalize marijuana, right?
let's move to the next topic, which is a very tragic one, suicide. Rachel, tell us about the HOPE program and what attempts the Mental Health Association is making to get the word out, so to speak.
Well, you know, suicide is in the news a lot lately, particularly since Robin Williams passed away. But we've been working on it for a long time. We run a 24/7 hotline. We work closely with the Crisis Center. We also do, we work with Montgomery County Public Schools on the Red Flags program to do suicide and depression prevention and awareness in...
Just briefly, what is the Red Flags program for the...
Well, it's taught in 7th and 10th grade health classes.
Okay.
It's part of the curriculum, and it really raises the students' awareness of the warning signs of depression and suicide, and how to recognize it in themselves, and how to recognize it in their friends, and how to alert help. You know, these days, you know, a lot of times kids are going to be texting their friends first when they're having suicidal thoughts, or putting it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. So they may see it before an adult does, and it's really helping kids recognize that and know who to go to and how to react. So we've been working on that for many, many years. In addition, we've been training clinicians, because a lot of mental health professionals out there have never been trained in how to handle suicide, believe it or not. So we've been working on that as well. And then advocacy, to get it out there for people to understand it's, you know, we need to talk about it. Talking about it is the only way to prevent it.
That's absolutely correct.
And more people die by suicide than homicide in this country each year.
I wanted to bring it home to Montgomery County. Say last year's statistics, how many suicides were there in Montgomery County?
Well, I don't happen to have that numbers, but it has been increasing lately. We've probably, see, when people think about Maryland, Maryland actually has a pretty low suicide rate compared to the rest of the country. And Montgomery County is pretty low too, because we have really great resources. But we have seen an increase. We've seen an increase in referrals from Montgomery County Public Schools to the Crisis Center. We've seen an increase in deaths. We've seen an increase in attempts. So we don't have the exact numbers, but we are starting to see a trend. And I can tell you that since Robin Williams' death, the hotline has had a huge increase.
While I'm thinking of it, what is the number of the hotline for our audience?
Well, I'll give you the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number for everybody. It's 1-800-273-TALK.
1-800-273-TALK.
Yes.
T-A-L-K, obviously.
And you can go to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We also do chat, so you can IM and talk to somebody 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. every day. And a lot of people prefer to reach out over the internet now rather than on the phone. Yeah.
How about since Montgomery County is very diverse, within like the expanding Hispanic Latino community, West African community, the Asian community, where the language may be an issue, and also the issue of mental health being a taboo in a lot of communities.
And that's where we do struggle. The Crisis Center, fortunately, and a lot of the county services like the Access team and people that come out and do assessments do have a lot of language capabilities. And it's important too because each diverse group has their own concerns. Young Latinas have a particularly high rate of attempts, whereas the gay, lesbian, transgender population has a high rate of completion. So they're extremely at high risk. And hopefully, as we get more acceptance of gay marriage and that community, we can lower
lift the pressures off. I think that when you have, for instance, difficulties in the economy, people are struggling. Montgomery County does have poverty in the county.
Yes, it does.
And we try desperately, I think, to ignore it, but we have to deal with it. Children are hungry. The school programs for feeding them is super important. So I can imagine that the suicide is seen by these folks, whether they're children or adults, as an escape. And so, we need to convince them that it's not the escape, that, there's solutions.
And the other thing I think we have to remember is that, and I'm not an expert on it, but I've done some reading and dealing with it directly in my career, is that it goes across economic and cultural groups.
Nobody's immune.
That's exactly correct. That's the best way to say it. No one is immune from it, and we tend to, like with many mental health issues, deny that there's a possibility that it'll occur.
And there's so much that you can do to help somebody. Just because somebody has a thought of suicide doesn't mean they're going to carry it out. And there's so much you can do to help somebody cope. There's so many great resources out there. But yeah, I mean, we've seen across the country an increase in suicide since the recession started. Montgomery County in particular, there's so much pressure to excel academically, take every AP class, to be the best in athletics, to be captain of the debate team. And then we have people coming from other countries that are trying to assimilate and acculturate, and that's a struggle as well.
Right.
In the limited time we have for your segment, are there any final words you'd like to give us? And give us that talk line number again, too.
1-800-273-TALK. It's a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I think the number one thing we can do to prevent suicide is talk about it. Get it out there. If you're concerned about somebody, ask them about it and connect them to resources in the county.
Very important, and thank you. We'll be right back after these messages. Greg, good to have you with us. Tell us about the dental clinic that you became aware of or know about.
Yes. Well, first want to start that I am a member. This is my 4th year for the University of Maryland Dental School in Baltimore. I'm on their board. So because of that, in that background, I know that we have a serious problem not only here, but all over the country where people without insurance or low-income people cannot get dental work. And if it's a toss-up between food or dental, they go with the food and they suffer. So saying that, one of the volunteers at the Victims' Rights Foundation, a college degree woman who's volunteered off and on with us for about 3 years, lost her job 8 months ago, had some unemployment, and that was cut off. And she developed, her tooth broke off in her mouth. And she came to me pretty much in tears and saying it's been like a week, no dental office would take me because I don't have insurance. And I said, well, I've heard of this place that does dental work. It's called Community Clinic, Inc. in Gaithersburg. Why don't you go up and try to see what happens? So when she went there, she found that there was first a lot of people, a lot of young people that were waiting to be serviced. And they said, I'm sorry, ma'am, we can get to you if you prove that you're not working, etc., but it would have to be next week. So when she called me, I went back up with her. I said, let's go back. And as she was correct, though. There was a line, there was a waiting list. But when I talked to the director, the dental person there said that, look, this woman has been in pain with a broken tooth for over a week, and that I don't know if she can survive, because I know sometimes people die with, so she said, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm not gonna eat lunch today. I'll squeeze in, but she has to wait about an hour. And she took it. So the first thing, I'm so happy with that clinic, but that also dental director, for understanding the severity of the situation. But secondly, my eyes were open. I saw all these young kids. I'm talking about 7 to 8 the first time I went, then I went back. There were another 10 all waiting to get dental care because their parents didn't have insurance.
And this is in Montgomery County, Maryland.
It's in Montgomery County, Maryland. You're right. And this clinic is in Gaithersburg.
That's not a criticism, but that's
A reality.
a reality along with these other issues that we have discussed, that there are people in great need.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
the services are not there, but this clinic at least is helpful
Right.
to those
How many
citizens.
dentists do they have that
They had
volunteer?
4 dentists at that site, and then after doing some more research, because I wrote a nice letter just saying how thankful I was to help my volunteer, I found there's another office that they have in Prince George's. It's called Community Clinic Inc., Montgomery County, and in Prince George's. There are two different offices, but they told me they have waiting lists sometime, if it's not that serious, up to 2 months. It depends on what the issue is.
Wow.
So
So-
many people need dental work.
So it sounds like they may need some fundraising and
That's
help.
right. And I did write in my letter, I wrote a letter to Ike Leggett actually, saying that if I could be of any help when it comes to funding, because I saw firsthand what it takes. And you all may remember about maybe 6 years ago now, a young boy died in Prince George's County. He had an abscess and they didn't have money for the clinic and he literally died. He
the
was a
infection.
school age,
Yeah.
child. So this could be very serious.
I think sometimes the population doesn't understand how serious certain dental issues can be. That is life and death. We all think of it as, oh, your braces or a cavity or something like that, but you're not thinking about, an abscess or something else that could literally, I think it's that the infection gets in your blood
Yeah.
and you
Sure.
die.
A lot of it is also socioeconomics because it's cheaper to buy a 2-liter soda than orange juice. And that adds up. And then individuals are so busy, 2-3 jobs, poor nutrition, and they put it off, and all of a sudden there's issues with a tooth, which could cause, down the line other issues. And so it is part nutrition. And I know at community clinic they do an outstanding job, but there's waiting lists for weeks. And a lot of times you can't wait that long. And the most you could do is patch it up with some antibiotics, but still you need to do a procedure. And it is expensive. And I know, my wife works for Family Services Inc. And Guide You Services, and she tells her clients, put money away, get a cleaning every 6 months and put money away, because you never know, because it could mean you pay your mortgage, your rent, or you get a tooth extracted.
And I'm not sure I understand, but the insurance that the children qualify for, that's county provided or state provided, that doesn't include dental services. Is that correct?
I'm not sure on that. I don't know the answer, but I do know there were a lot of kids there that needed. And I did, if I have a minute, wanted to say that at the
just about
University of
30
Maryland
seconds.
Dental School in Baltimore, because that's where the dental school is, for the last 4 years, it's averaged around $1 million worth of service for inner city Baltimore kids and families. So we're trying now for Montgomery County, that maybe that northern border with Frederick, to see if we can get a dental clinic within 4 years where the students can get free dental service
Oh,
in
that's
that
great.
area. So that's a goal.
That's
So
fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that story and that information.
Yes.
We've got an election coming up. right?
Yes.
2014, not a
Yes.
presidential election.
Exactly. But every election is important.
That's exactly.
So every election. So yes. So early voting, it's the 3rd time around. It initiated in 2010. We have 9 early voting centers across Montgomery County. They're distributed amongst all our 635,000 registered voters. We have about a 98% coverage.
Say that again. How many registered?
We have 635,000 active registered voters in Montgomery County. So we have 9 early voting centers. We expanded from 5 to 9. It is growing in popularity. We're no longer an agrarian community. So I understand that Tuesday, November 4th is not necessarily the greatest day because it is a Tuesday, we're all busy. But nonetheless, in Maryland, we have options.
Right.
Not only can you vote by mail, you can actually go today to our local Board of Elections and request your vote by mail ballot. You have 8 continuous days of early voting from next Thursday, the 23rd of October through the 30th of October from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And also, you could, like I said, go to vote by mail, and you can go to our office. You can request an absentee ballot. And then you have Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 4th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And there you have to go to your particular precinct.
Right.
All registered voters should have gotten the sample ballot which is literally, I call it the
I
cheat
received
sheet.
mine.
You got yours? I call it the cheat sheet of Election Day. So please, study the contest, pick your candidates. Don't do your homework in front of the voting machine, okay? Because we want to make sure that you're in and out to make it as painless as possible. Do your research. The Board of Elections cannot provide you, as a per se, like the Legal Women Voters, the Voter's Guide.
What is a phone number where
Yes.
people can get
So
the
our
information?
hotline is
Your hotline.
240-777-8500. But you also go
240-777-8500.
You can also go online, which is 777vote.org. You could look up your voter registration. You can find out where you need to present yourself on election day if you do vote that day. We have all the information on early voting centers, and we have what is called a wait time. So you could look up right before you leave to work, and you could say, hey, Silver Spring, the wait time is 20 minutes, but at Praiser Community Center is 5 minutes. So then you'll go to Praiser Community Center.
Now, I had a question because coming from a civil rights background, I know in some states they want voter ID like your driver's license. What do we have in Montgomery County?
So if you mail in your voter registration application, okay, you may be asked to present an ID. If you register to vote at the Motor Vehicles Administration or at the Board of Elections, we will not request that. We are connected with the Motor Vehicles Administration, so we verify individual, date of birth, address. But whenever you're in doubt, you should always carry your ID, not just because it's election day, but in case something occurs. So it's important that you do have an ID, whether it's a Maryland issued ID or a governmental issued ID.
Now, as a follow-up, when I go to vote, say
Yes.
and this has happened to friends of
Yes.
mine, they voted last time in one location, then they moved.
Yes.
So what happens then? Do they have provision ballots?
Yes, we have provisional ballots. So what I tell all voters, if for whatever reason, the great thing about early voting is you don't have to go to a specific center.
Right.
You could work in Silver Spring and live in Germantown and go to Rockville, okay? But for election day, you have to go to your specific precinct. If you did not update your records and now you live, let's say in Silver Spring, you live in, and you used to live in Bethesda and you showed up at your old location, you will be given a provisional ballot. And it's okay. The provisional ballot is not a bad word. It just gives us the opportunity to research this individual to ensure that they are registered. We will update the information as it was presented and provided on the application. But it's a safeguard not only for the voter, but also for us as administrators to ensure that the appropriate individual does vote.
How are we going to increase voter turnout?
There's so many
Mr. Zelaya?
options. Look, we do a lot of outreach. We go do a lot of press. We have press advisory. We work with youth. We work with families. It comes down, I call it voter responsibility. There's one aspect of voter rights, okay, and we just talked about civil rights. But there's really voter responsibility as well, okay?
Well, and I also think people need to understand, because when you talk about voter responsibility, they all kind of cringe and go, well, really, what is my responsibility? My point on this is that you can't complain about who gets elected if you didn't vote. I mean, if you want a particular person to get into office, you have to go vote and talk to your neighbors and friends to get them to go to vote, whether they agree or disagree with you, because that's what carries the day. I mean, that's what makes the difference.
Separates this nation from many others.
And you have to keep your record updated. So there's any life changes, marriage, divorce, you bought a house, downsized to an apartment. Even if it's the same building and you move from apartment 102 to 101, for us that's a completely new address, because the Postal Service, they cannot forward any election-related correspondence to your new address.
Right.
You'll get your bills and your credit cards and all that good stuff, but the Board of Election, it comes back to us. So it's important, anytime you move, any life changes, you need to tell us as soon as possible, and when in doubt, fill another application out.
Well, on that note, I want to thank all of you for joining me this week, and thank you for joining all of us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Fred Evans. Please join us next week at the same time. Thank you.